Hi everyone, you're listening to the Brown History Podcast. My name is Essen and this is episode 25. Our guest today is Tjinder Singh, the frontman of the legendary British band Cornershop. This is very exciting. Cornershop is such a special band. They're truly one of a kind. Cornershop is a band that knew where they came from, they knew what was going on around them, and they knew what they wanted to say. Keep in mind that this was during a time and place where a South Asian having any platform was just a crazy, unimaginable thing. These guys are truly pioneers. So if you don't know Cornershop, please do yourself a favor and check them out. Before we get started, I just want to mention that if you like this podcast and you like the Brown History Instagram account and you want to help out, you want to support it, then just visit www.brownhistorypodcast.com. Honestly, there's so much effort, so much hard work and time and energy that goes behind all this. And whatever you provide, whatever you give will go a long, long way. There's so many ways to help out. You can shop, you can donate, you can become a patron. So thanks for listening and let's get started. Here we go.
You are, yes.
Wow, it is a honor.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. So Cornershop has been around for a very long time, and let's just go back to the beginning. Let's go start with your parents. When did your parents come to the UK and what did they do?
Yeah, my dad was a headmaster in India, and he decided to come to England because jobs were being offered in England. But when he came here, he realised he had to re-educate himself to the English systems, and he also did a lot of other jobs to be able to afford his education. So he was a bus conductor. He did taxis. He did a lot of different. He worked at a petrol station.
This was the 1980s?
Well, that was from the 60s, and actually through when things got a bit tighter in the 80s, he was then doing double jobs again.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the late 60s that he had to re-educate himself. Then he became a teacher again, and my mother then came over, and she was educated in India, but she actually only did manual work in England.
She worked at a factory.
Yeah.
That must have been tough.
It was tough for her, but it was also a community for her. So when they weren't working, because there was a lot of times because we were from a very industrial place, so there'd be a cluster of Asian ladies working in one factory, and if that folded, then they would get the word that another factory needed them, and so they would move from factory to factory. And so they at least had like-minded people around them that were going through the same experience. So I think that's what kept them going. But the work was hard. It was manual. It was fighting metal, as they called it, and lots of forges, lots of heat, lots of the area was a bit like Detroit. It's called, in the Midlands, it was called the Black Country because of all the smoke and the furnaces. And
that's what the Black Country is.
Yes.
Growing up, were you involved in the Indian community?
Yes, a lot, because the small village that we had suddenly decided to get its own temple, its own Godhra, which was in an ex-snooker hall, and that became a focus for the community, and so that was a regular thing for us, and that's where I got into recording cassettes and obviously helping out in the kitchen and helping out everywhere else. My dad was a treasurer and he was also the stage manager, so that was a regular thing.
Wow. Were your parents okay with you focusing on music instead of a 9-to-5 job?
Well, I never actually went for music. My degree was in business information technology. I mean, I've got sons now, and I'm very offended that they would do whatever they do in front of me, and we always kept our parents away from the harm of what we did. Not that we did anything bad, but we always respected that they didn't want to see anything that they wouldn't appreciate. And that's not the case today. Tale of woe in itself. But they never, I mean, if it was quite a strict sort of community. If people were, for instance, if we started to dress differently to other people in the few years towards the end, and that was very much scorned upon. And that was probably the first biggest sort of realization that there were rules and structure and nonsense as far as we were concerned.
Did you, in that environment at that time? I mean, I've heard stories and I've read a lot about the racism and the hostile environment that the UK was. I mean, still is somewhat, but it was a lot worse and more violent back then. Did you experience that? Did you witness that?
Yes, we did witness it. We grew up with it. We didn't actually. That was as much as the community of the Asians that you were with. You didn't realise till a little further on that you don't have to live like that. You don't have to live with other people dictating your dress sense, and equally you don't have to live with white people dictating what you should be doing and you shouldn't be doing. So freedom, I think, is the word that one was lurching for a few years before I left Wolverhampton, the place where I was born. And then when I did leave the place, then freedom was very much high on the agenda. We went to Preston Polytechnic, which was a lower form of university. And that was in Lancashire. And then I moved after studying. Well, after studying, I spent a year on the Union at Lancashire Polytechnic. And I think it had got university status by then, after I'd left. And then I went to Leicester to live with my brother. But we'd formed in about, I'd got lots of racist shit when I was an ENTS officer, when I used to put on the events for the union. And whereas in Wolverhampton, you'd have the racism that was quite plain and physical and everyday. There it was, it was unexpected. It was an institution of higher education. You wouldn't expect it for a start, and when it did come, it was very conniving, very underhand, and very, very hidden, and therefore a little taste to what the real world was, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. And did you feel when you were performing that you were, I guess, an outsider, or that you didn't belong in this kind of industry? Because I don't think there were a lot of Indians at that time playing music in the UK.
You know, those sort of things only sort of come to light now. It's a bit like the freedom thing. You just do it. You don't. If you thought about that, or you were hemmed in by that, then you wouldn't do those sort of things. If you even thought about the music industry, full stop, forget the boundaries to it, then you would not. You just give up. So we never really thought about that. We only thought about what we were doing, how much we enjoyed it, how much. Certainly at the start, we thought we were progressing, because we weren't musicians as such at all, but we were ideas, and ideas where we found that other people didn't have them. So we had something other people didn't have. They could play the fretboard backwards.
How did you know you were good? Like, when did you know that you have something here?
We never necessarily thought that we were good. We just thought that we were different. that was really the starting point of it. And I think that's always been the case. We've never thought we were good. We're just we're different. We've got something to prove. We've still got ideas, so we persevere. So I think that's what we carried us on from the start and to the next album and the next and the next to where we are now, speaking to you.
So when you were making music, you were just making music, but there was I don't know if it was always political, but there was a turning point when things get more political. I'm referring to the time when Morrissey of the Smiths waved the flag at some music festival, and there's a photo of you burning his photo.
Yeah, well, I think really the politics certainly came and was much more focused. It became more focused when I got the racist discrimination from my educated peers. Getting 3 votes no confidence in the first 2 weeks is not very good, especially when the first 2 weeks, the most important time of most people's introduction to a university. The Morrissey thing was something that just happened. That we did not because of that gig. That gig was where other people might have seen him draped in a Union Jack. We never saw that gig.
Mm-hmm.
Ours was much more wide ranging, and in terms of, you see, nowadays you could look at Morrissey and just say he's racist because his badge is of a far right British organisation.
Yeah.
But we didn't have a badge in those days, and so you had to put all these things together. You had to put the artwork together, the imagery, the Union Jack, the lyrics, the past lyrics, the fact that he talked about so many great issues such as vegetarianism. On the other hand, he also refused to put a story straight if it was about racism. His hatred of certain types of music was quite pronounced. So those were things that we felt as individuals, also individuals that quite like the Smiths, and so were quite disappointed that a group that could be so influential were starting to be so influential in a very derogatory, racist way, which was something that we'd been born with, and we thought we were moving away from that. So it was loaded with a lot of issues, and it was done, as far as we were concerned, with a lot of integrity, and so we've never recoiled from it. We've always thought it was the right thing to do, especially at that time. Reiterating some of what you said earlier, at that time racism was coming up again, and people were getting beaten up in the streets and being killed, quite frankly. So as well as going on into marshes in the East End of London, we saw what Morrissey was doing. So it didn't sit very well with us.
Mm-hmm. So then in the 90s, you released your first EP, The Days of Ford Cortina. And what I was impressed to read about was that the vinyl color was curry colored.
Oh, yes.
That's amazing.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it is amazing. Unfortunately, in those days when you had colored plastic in vinyl records, it's often warped, or maybe it was just the heat. It was just too much curried heat that made it warp. So some of the pressings weren't brilliant, but yeah, the name Cornershop was a reference to the fact that a lot of Asians were seen as no good for anything other than running a corner shop, and so those were some of the elements that we sort of prodded fun at as well.
How was the reaction to your EP?
Well, by then, by the time we'd released our first EP, things were pretty vibrant for us. We'd signed to Ouija Records, which was a label that were putting out a lot of the Riot Girl songs, groups in England, and so that was political in itself. So it was very vibrant, lots of political stuff going on, lots of TV, lots of interviews, and lots of great discussion. It was very political. It was good. It's sort of punk, I think, on a part of punk, and I always thought that we were a bit like the Rastas, like reggae, because punk took punk and reggae. Punk and reggae got on, and us and the Riot Girls got on, and so it was, in that way it had its affinity.
I think you toured Europe with Oasis.
That was much later on. That was America.
Yeah.
90. That was 98.
98? How was that? That must have been an amazing experience. How was he? Or how was they?
No, it was excellent. Well, we'd met Noel just before we'd left, and we really got on with him. That was backstage. I think that was at a Beck show, but I'm not too sure. And we knew that we got on with him. And then when we met the rest of them, we knew that we could get on with them as well. And we did. We got on with them. We got on with their crew, and we were very well looked after. And it was a great tour, really good. And big arenas. It was different and lovely. We got on with them really well. When we'd finished touring, we still kept communication with them, and some of their roadies then started working for us, and we had Quigsy, the bass player, play us on a song for us, and Noel did guitars on a track called Spectral Mornings, and that was on an album that was out in 2002. So I think that was about the fourth or fifth album. So we've skipped quite far, but it was a lovely tour. Because we were different musically, we got on. There was no clashes at all. And also, I mean, I'd spent a year in Manchester myself. Me and Ben had studied in Lancashire, which is right near Manchester, between Manchester and Liverpool, actually, Preston was. So we knew those sort of characters, and they are a very different kind of sort of person. The Northerners are very down to earth, and they say what they mean, and it can get a bit hot, but we all got on with each other.
1987 is when you released your album When I Was Born for the Seventh Time, and that really put you on the map, and it's a great album. How did that come about, that album? What was the process like to make that album?
Well, I would say actually the previous album, Woman's Gotta Have It, with tracks like Tjinders, got us signed into America on David Byrne's label, the Walkabout. That then opened up us going to America and touring there, and we toured there quite a few times before the Oasis tour. And so when it came to that album, everything was sort of in flow. The touring was good, and I think because we had a few singles out beforehand, Butter the Soul was out before When I Was Born for the Seventh Time, and it was on it. There were quite a few singles that were just said to us, well, things are going really well, and the response was getting better and better. So we went into the studio to record When I Was Born for the Seventh Time with a great enthusiasm to continue doing what the hell we wanted. We'd already met Allen Ginsberg in New York and recorded his vocal, which ended up on the album. We'd done I took quite a few samples of spoken word and field sort of recordings when I was in America. So everything was positive. We used Dan the Automator. We actually used him on our side project, Dan the Automator, and we were the first English group to use him. And we got him over to do the production on a few tracks, 3 tracks, and that gave it a different bent as well, which was very good. And so yeah, we were we really enjoyed that album. It was actually also an album where we first used a really good, top-notch London studio. And that was enjoyable as well. And we still used our old studio in Preston, which we've always continued to go back to.
How did you get Yoko Ono to work in your album? Because it says Yoko Ono.
Well, no, we had to get permission from Yoko and
Paul McCartney
to use to do a version of Norwegian Wood, because it was done in Punjabi, i.e. therefore seen as a vast variation difference to how it was first recorded. So we needed their permission to do. But we'd met Sean Lennon in New York, and he'd helped us secure that as well. But it was quite tense that we had to wait for what we knew was a very great end to an album. So there were still some stressful parts, but essentially it was an album that we'd record a few tracks and get them onto tapes and send them to the record label at the time, and they would give it rounds of applause. They'd stand up and give it rounds of applause. That's not what is normally done in an English office. That's what sort of happens in Japanese offices. So we everything was full throttle, everything was positive, and we knew we were onto something really good, and we were. And the album in America did really well. So we were pretty much riding high, and then we had America was, at the time anyway, was a beast where you had to keep on going over and develop and work in different areas and different markets and wait for different radios to take it on board, and everything built up over a matter of years. That's what was happening with the album. And then the single got Brimful of Asha got remixed. We were actually in America when that happened, though we liked Norman Cook, and we knew that it was going to be coming. And when it did come, we knew that it was going to be massive. And in a way, that sort of upset the apple cart of what we were doing with the album, which was a bit unfortunate.
What do you mean?
Well, if the album had carried on, there would have been a different way forward for the group. We would have had to maybe persevere a bit longer, but maybe that would have bore more fruit than having the apple cart tipple over onto one wheel, which was the Brimful wheel. It gave a lot of focus to that remix. And in a way, it was a focus for a lot of people to just easily say, well, it's not exactly them, it's another group. So they didn't have to give us the credit that we felt we'd put into the group over the years.
I see.
Because we were going back to England, where we'd found it difficult. Europe was great for us. Europe was much more open. When we got to America, we were blown over. We couldn't believe how many, because all of the cobwebs that we'd had from the upbringing, from the culture that we'd been brought up with, had gone. And we were shocked that America was not like what we'd thought. We thought America was very backward, and we were going to have a rough time. It was very much the opposite. They're very much more forward thinking, certain sectors of the American people, and they took us to heart. So we were very lucky, and we appreciated that. Whereas England has always been difficult. We've always had to go back to square one.
You've reached kind of like this high point and you're riding high. How did you process the fame that you were getting now? And was your fan base now a lot more Indian or was it a lot more white?
Our fan base has never really been Indian. It's probably more Indian now.
Yeah.
Through people like yourself pushing it, because we did sort of glide through the earlier parts of it. But if you were on a stage and you were Indian, and then you weren't singing in English, that was considered quite rude. And if you had a guitar, it was considered that you might get a good kick in and a good punch in. Nowadays, people think, well, that didn't happen, that wouldn't have happened, surely not. But it did. People didn't like Asian people being on a stage with a guitar, whether they were white, and especially if they were brown. Nowadays, it's considered de rigueur. You have to have a brown person on stage, but then it wasn't, and we got into scrapes along the way because of that. And Asian people have never really. They didn't take to us until Brimful. That's the song that has references for them, even though the song. I mean, our first song has reference to Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan and other things, but. That's the first song they understood in terms of references that worked for them. But no, it was very very difficult.
There was this band that came from the UK, I think before you guys, and it was called Alien Culture. And there were Pakistanis and Indians, and I was reading about their interviews, and they were saying that how like that they as they were performing, there was also racism from white people, but they also had a lot of hate from their own community. Did you feel a lot of oppression from your community?
Oh yeah, they wanted to kill you if they could get their hands on you.
Like, was it jealousy, or was it just you were trying to or is it because you were creating noise and you were bringing attention to the community and that was only going to cause harm?
No, it is through a very simple saying that person is a soul that's gone astray. And that's how Asians that were doing something different were considered in those times. And that was the phrase, souls that had gone astray. There's no helping them. They've gone. And basically saying that they've left the community. So it wasn't anything to do with jealousy. It was just, it was a hatred. It was a hatred that someone was of their color was doing something that they considered thirsty.
That's fascinating. So now you're in the stage where you've kind of established yourself, and now you want to create another album. So in 2002, you released Hand Cream for a Generation, and you had Noah Gallagher as a guitarist. How did he come aboard? How did he get on? And how was the process of making this album once after you've established yourself?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. Well, Noel actually asked to play on stage with us when we were in America because one of our songs, Jalandhar Share, doesn't have bass on it as such, doesn't have bass guitar. It has electric keyboard bottom end, but no bass. So he used to come on and play that at most shows. And that's a song with totally Asian lyrics. So the song that we then asked him to play on was also with Asian lyrics. So we thought of him because he played bass on the other one. This time he played guitars, and he not only played guitar, he played loads of guitars and did lots of different takes and used lots of different pedals and effects, and really got into it. I mean, he could have just come in and just done the one thing and gone, but he was there for quite a few hours, and then we went to the pub after that. And so we were very happy that that he'd really committed himself to doing the track rather than just playing on it, and that was that. But really, you're right. We'd established ourselves with When I Was Born for the Seventh Time. We really had to pull out a hell of a lot of stops to do the next album because we thought we had a better album in us. We thought that things were going well and things would carry on. So we put a lot of effort into it, and we didn't want it to fail. We wanted to do an album that was better than When I Was Born for the Seventh Time. I think we achieved that. Unfortunately, it didn't sell as good as When I Was Born for the Seventh Time. But I think we did come out with an album that was better, and an album that still was quite adventurous, with Otis Clay helping do the introduction on the first track, Heavy Soup, with Guigsy doing the bass, Guigsy from Oasis doing the bass on Lessons Learned from Rocky 1 to Rocky 3, that was about the music industry. And then with songs that, like Music for Motion 11 was like a reggae song with proper reggae vocals from friends of ours and Guigsy's. It didn't stop. The idea still kept on going, and we did what we thought was a very compelling album, but it also took a bit of time before it came out. It was actually done in 2001, but we waited a year to put it out.
Why'd you wait a year?
The record label wanted to wait to get the marketing around it right, and also to get America more in line with the release as it came out in Britain. So that sort of it did okay, and it's still doing okay, but it didn't do as well as the previous album. Were
you heartbroken?
Yes, I was actually. Yeah, and then we went on tour with that album. We put a lot of effort into it, and it wasn't reciprocated by the record label. So we parted ways with that record label.
How did your parents take in all the success that you were achieving?
Well, actually, my mother had passed away in 96.
I'm sorry to hear that.
That's okay. Sleep on the Left Side was actually, it's about my mother, and it's about birth and rebirth and loss and planets. And my father actually passed away in 2001. So there wasn't my mother. My auntie told my mother that she loved my voice, which made my mother very happy. So it was a very simple thing, but that's about all I can remember of my mother and my musical career. My father, I think, was just happy that I was getting on, and other people that he knew were telling him how well his son was doing. So that was enough happiness for him. But they wouldn't have been the sort of parents that would come out on the road with you.
No, I understand.
And hang about backstage.
Yeah.
They were very simple people, and I think they were just happy that that my life was easier than probably what they thought it would be, because a son who's done what I did at that age, they must have, thinking about it now as a father now, as I did, as I already said, it must have been very worrying for them. For their son to finish his education, then decide to continue and do entertainment organise the entertainment, and then put themselves in harm's way because they knew all the racism and the threats that I'd got.
You became an open target.
Well, yes, and from lots of different sectors of because there'd be the security that were offended. There was the committee that had never seen a black person in that position and didn't want one, but then there was also the electorate and the students, and they did want me, and I got re-elected, and next year, and then I told them to stuff that and got the whole committee elected in a very different vein. So there was it was a wonderful year. It was very stressful. It was a whirlwind of an introduction into the world, big wide world, especially the music industry world, because that's full of arseholes.
Yeah. You have children?
I do have children.
How old are they?
One's 20 and the other's 15.
Do they have your musical acumen?
I haven't got any musical acumen, but they have.
You know what I mean.
Well, my youngest son is just starting to do promoting shows, actually, and he's more into beats per minute and drum and bass and all the different genres that come with that. And he created a genre called racket, which is doing quite well in London at the moment. So that's a source of pride. Mm-hmm. But there's also there's a lot to him, which is just as worrying as I was, if not more. And the other one's a lot more level-headed, and he's a very good pianist, and he's a lot more laid back and into his art, and yeah.
Did you have to explain all the references in your songs? You know, Brimful of Asha. Did you have to explain who Asha was and what she meant to a lot of people back then?
I've never personally explained it. I think they've read things about it, and their mothers. I mean, I met their mom quite early on, actually. I think we met. She was studying an MA in London, and she was also a journalist for a Parisian music magazine, and that's how we met. And then I asked her if she'd come with us to France.
Wow.
To be our tour manager because we were there for a few weeks, and we started seeing each other there. And then I moved to London. So really, we've been together right from the start, and I'm sure they may from time to time have spoken to their mom about it, but ultimately they keep away from it. And every now and then, some of their friends will tell them that they've heard an album or that their father likes it or whatever, or teachers as well. So every now and then there's a little point back to the group, but yeah, it's a bit like that on the road I live. Actually, we've got quite a lot. We've got the chap from Cast, Thurston Moore, just lives around the corner. We got there's quite a few people in groups who probably have the same problem I have.
What do you think of the music that's being played these days?
I don't.
You don't like it?
I don't think about it.
You don't think about it. That's that's all right. I guess that's fair enough.
No, with regards to what my son listens to, I think it's music without any brain, because there's no vocals to it, and so you have to have something else that offsets that fills in where the vocals are, and whether that's drink or whether that's something harder. It's a bit of a shame to have to do that, but that's what kids
That's what
do.
it is.
Yeah, and they're more than welcome to it.
I know in your day it's really tough for anybody, a person of color, to do anything, but in this generation it's still somewhat difficult, not as much as it was back then. Do you have any advice or any tips that you would like to give to anybody listening who's trying to do something, but it's very difficult because it's an industry dominated by white people?
Well, I think I'll go back to what I said before about the industry. If you think of it for what it is, it ain't going to serve you. If you think of it for what you want it to be, then you're going to serve yourself, and there's no other way around it. You will only be caught up in the frustrations of trying to change it without actually changing it. I try not to give any advice really over the years, because mine has been such a higgledy-piggledy sort of introduction to where we are now, and I don't think you're going to do that unless you really want to do it. You'll just be put off.
There are a lot of people in this generation that are discovering your music day by day, and they look at your music. Even when I found your music, you did such a good job of creating something that, you know, looks onto the future, but also doesn't forget, you know, one's roots and one's cultural identity. And you kind of find this perfect combination with not just like it sounds good, but there's like a sort of a respectful element to it, you know, and not many people have done that in the past, and not people are doing it now either. So you're seen as a pioneer, as a role model. So what you say, I know you don't want to give advice or anything, but what you say is very, very important, even to me, to a lot of other people. So that's why I'm asking.
Well, you know, what you just said is so nice that
That's
it's lovely, you know. And if my dad heard half of that, he would have loved that as a summary. That's really nice. And I think, I mean, I don't really think that much about it, but when you just mention that about the past and the future, I think it is. It is, even though I'm not a practicing Sikh, it is from those days of going to the temple and the Asian community that sort of set that in store, because you did have to look. You did have to look around and think, well, I can't do that because it wouldn't be acceptable. Nowadays, people don't have those limits, and maybe that's a great thing. They don't have to have those limits at all. Well, it is a great thing. What am I saying? It is a great thing. But in those days, you did have limits, and you had to look around, and you couldn't. You weren't totally free to do what you wanted to do. You had to be very careful about it. I think the only thing I've been very open about and a little too carefree is the industry, because I don't have that much love for it, and I don't think my father would like the swearing that I've put in its direction. But yeah, we obviously, it's not an intentional thing. No one could have intended to do the music that we've done and hope that it sits in a certain way in the future. But it does seem to have sat in a nice way. And I think even I think it's right in terms of where we are in terms of the albums. After that, leaving that label that I said we'd left, we then went to Rough Trade Records, and we knew Jeff at Rough Trade, who ironically put all the early Smiths albums out, and we did a few singles, and one of them was the Bubbly Core single. And we got the album ready, but Rough Trade then went into bed with our old label, so we decided to part ways, which was very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because Jeff is very similar in terms of what he likes in terms of music and in terms of politics. And he actually used to live he was born in Stoke Newington, which is where I live now. So there's a lot of similarities, and we would have really got on well with Jeff had we'd carried on. But yeah, so the Bubbly Core stuff, Top Knot and Natch came out around that time.
Yeah.
She sings totally in Punjabi. She was actually from Preston, where we'd studied, and I'd met her once in Preston, but we were then reintroduced by a taxi driver friend of mine.
How did that song come about, Natch? Because it's very different from your other stuff.
Yeah, well, I think part of us has been like being a band and playing live instruments, and then the other part has been using technology and turntablism and other sort of more experimental studio sort of techniques, and that was a mixture of all of those again, but then working with Bubbly, or Kieran is a birth name. And the first song I think we did was Natch, and she liked it and her kids liked it, and so that was all very good. And then the second song was Top Knot, which I spent about 3 months on doing the music, and when she heard it she was horrified. You know, when people get dizzy because you told them something and they just turn to, yeah, all their life drains out of them. That's how she felt when she first heard it. Because for a lady who would, see, the thing is, she's about my age. She's from Preston. She would have crossed me going to Preston, and she went to London. She had an arranged marriage. She'd done all the things that were probably in store for me: an arranged marriage, staying in the community, and sticking to your culture. She'd done those things, whereas I'd gone the other way and I'd moved away from that culture. Right. And then with Natch, we tried to meld in the middle, and she couldn't take the music because she thought it was too far away from where her vocals were musically. She said the music had to all be done again, which was quite devastating to me. And then it was her children that persuaded her that it was okay. And so nothing's without its problems. And I think after that was good in a way, because after that she trusted me on all the other stuff. And certainly the Bubbly album is very varied in the different types of music that are put to her vocals.
What was the reception for Natch? People loved it.
Well, the weird thing is that they not only loved it, but they're loving it, and it's still going.
Yeah, I just discovered it this week, and it's like, wow.
Oh, well, we're having that. We never got it out on vinyl. We only put it out as a CD, and that's at the end of the year. We're going to have that out on vinyl. It's just carried on. It's been one of those things that has just laid in India, and not a lot of people knew about it, and then it moved. Now it's starting to move, and people are getting to know it. So, yeah, it's a good thing. It's not stopped.
I feel like your music is gonna have a huge comeback soon. You know, the new generation is gonna discover it, and they're gonna just they're just gonna bring it back. It's gonna go like viral.
Oh well,
I hope so.
Well, like with as I say, it's a dormant thing in India, and it's sort of built slowly. It's a romantic thing. It's it's what films are made about. But it would be lovely if that was the case, because we think we've put a lot of effort in. We've had to certainly do a lot of fighting to put the stuff that we've put out in the manner that we wanted to put it out. I mean, right from the start. I mean, in terms of business, because I talked about the music industry, we've always tried to be independent of other people, so that they can't influence us in the music that's put out. And we've never had an A&R person ever. We've always said, here's the next album, here's the next single. They don't even hear it until it goes to mastering stage, which is the way that we like to do it. Other people need the other the checks and balances that a large label can bring. We've always gone against that with a view to having the freedom that we want to do. And I think we've used that freedom. The Bubbly Core is a great example of that freedom, that it was a totally different thing, which we put a lot of effort and time into. So if it did come round for us again, and I do feel that certainly it has got better. I think skipping forward to the last album did so well that we were shocked. It really sort of hit home with a lot of people, and a lot of people that used to know us, and certainly a lot of people that didn't want to know us, and that's in itself has sent a wave back to the back catalogue and people, because I don't think we've just put stuff out. I think we've put out stuff that makes a great story. Yeah. It's not just one album to another. It's the development of a group. The fact that we do I've always done the production. The fact that we've always had a hand in the artwork and knowing who we want to do the artwork, or what ideas that we want, or who we need to just leave to get the artwork done because we trust them. Same with the videos to some certain extent. And we started from absolutely nothing, from an absolute bedroom, to moving into a small home studio, to the studio in Preston, to bigger studios in London. And so nothing has really stayed still for us. We've always had to change and develop, and we think that's just as interesting as the albums have been as well. So we always see our careers as a story.
What's next for you guys?
Well, things are quite slow for us in England at the moment, even though a lot of people seem to think that the COVID thing is over. Well, our government has vowed in their wisdom to not go into another lockdown.
Yeah.
But that's what they've done all the time. They've always gone into a lockdown late, if they've ever gone into it. It's 29 times worse than it was a year ago, yet people seem to think that it's all over, which is quite worrying. Yeah. And then we've got Brexit here as well.
Yeah.
You see, for us, Brexit is everything that we ever sung about. We grew up, Wolverhampton was a place which had, I'm sure you've probably had articles on it, but Enoch Powell was was a very right-wing anti-immigration Minister of Parliament, and he was he was in a constituency in Wolverhampton. He'd served some time in India, actually, and he was a complete bastard. And that we grew up in the shadow of Enoch Powell.
Yeah.
And that was the first anti-immigration wave for us. And the second one is Brexit. And we see it exactly the same as having Enoch Powell there. It's a very...
it's kind of a full circle for you. You're making music in a, post-Brexit, making music is kind of making music back in the day.
Well, yeah, we've reached 12 o'clock again. We're at the top of the clock again. Unfortunately, it's not the clock that we want to be on, but yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah.
I think we're out of time, and I don't think I have anything else to ask. Would you like to add anything?
Well, I think we've sort of skipped through some areas and maybe dealt too heavily on some others, but no, everything's. We've got a website which is cornershop.com, and if anyone wanted to see what we do, that would be nice if they could visit us there. Other than that, no.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's such an honor to have you here. It's probably like a milestone for my podcast career. I'm gonna brag about
Thank you.
this to everybody, but this is just so amazing.
Very good of you. Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
Have a great day.